Good morning, I'm Tanya Eiserer. I'm a senior investigative reporter. I'm joined this morning by James Hawthorne. He is a retired school police chief for Cedar Hill, and he's going to be here today to really talk to us about police response and how police are trained to handle active shooters. Now, I'm going to give a brief recap of yesterday. We saw emotional testimony from a couple of police teachers describing what they saw and did as this horrible massacre unfolded. We've also saw ballistic testimony from Department of Public Safety analysts and investigators. But now let's take a listen to Rebecca Lopez's story from last night.
Bullets shattered windows and ripped through walls, leaving behind destruction where children once sat. The jury saw the pictures and then heard from survivors who thought they were going to die.
And you just hear more shots. They were like non-stop. And I thought, he's gonna kill me.
Amy Franco saw the shooter firing his weapon as he walked towards Robb Elementary. She warned students and teachers and then called 911 and waited while hiding under a desk.
I kept asking the operator, where are the cops? Where are the cops?
Lynn Deming testified she was wounded as gunfire erupted.
Shrapnel or debris or something hit me.
But while she was bleeding, she ushered her students to safety, told them to pray, and kept telling them she loved them.
I wanted to tell them it would be okay, but I wasn't sure, and I just wanted the last thing they heard was that somebody loved them.
Nicole Ogborn said she crawled on her belly to get to her students who were crouched in a corner and told of how one little boy tried to protect her.
One of my students, after I got under the curtain, I was laying on my stomach and he crawled onto my back and laid across me and rubbed my arm.
Prosecutors wanted the jury to hear while all the teachers and students who were unarmed risked their lives for each other. Adrian Gonzales, a trained officer with a weapon, didn't act to protect them.
It haunts me to this day.
Well, we're going to take it on out to Amanda Henderson. She's a reporter in Uvalde, in Corpus Christi right now. Amanda, can you talk to us about the scene there in Corpus Christi right now?
Yeah, so right now we are waiting for things to get underway at the Nueces County Courthouse right here behind me. That is where the witness testimony has been ongoing pretty much since the week started. Of course, Wednesday being the one day we didn't hear from witnesses while they determined if there was going to be the motion for mistrial that will move forward. Ultimately, it did not. Judge Sid Harrell decided to throw out that witness testimony that was in question. And so people are just getting here right now. This building typically opens just a little after 7 o'clock. That's usually when we go inside. But with things getting ready around 9, this is, I would say, about the time that the families of the victims and survivors normally arrive. We're not sure if they're going to be here this morning, but they have been here every day since opening statements.
Well, can you talk to us a bit about the reaction yesterday from the family to the testimony we heard from these teachers, which was just painful and hard to listen to?
Very, and I personally have talked to some of the people who took the stand yesterday just in the past for stories we've done, and I can only imagine what it was like to relive that, not just for them, but for the families. And, you know, we saw several of them wiping tears from their eyes, and that's kind of in line with what we've seen from the beginning when they've been in there. They have had their heads down in some cases. Others have rocked back and forth to comfort themselves. This is very viscerally tough for them.
And you know, obviously we also heard other testimony yesterday from the officers going through ballistics. What's your sense of where prosecutors are taking us with that testimony?
So with that particular testimony, what I got out of it per se was that they were trying to determine if Adrian Gonzales, the former Uvalde CISD officer whose trial we're covering, did fire his weapon towards the gunman, because they kept going in detail of what is this shell casing for? What kind of weapon would this be used? What kind of weapon did the gunman have? And they went through the magazines, they went through the actual weapons themselves, and it appeared that they were trying to match frame by frame by frame with every shell casing that was outside of Robb Elementary, and there were a lot of them, to the weapons that they had found in the vehicle, as well as could any of these have matched Adrian Gonzales' weapon? And from when I was in there, again, there were a lot of just picture by picture by picture they were going through with the FBI representative out of San Antonio.
And then, one of the things that struck me during that testimony was just to see the pictures of these little school books and seeing the bullets just, having ripped through those books. I don't know, was there much reaction in the courtroom when we were seeing those kind of pictures?
I think it was kind of just the idea of being stunned, but also for the families, just the painful realization of how destructive those 77 minutes and the minutes before he went into the school truly were. I mean, those are the first time that those photos have been made publicly available. So a lot of people are getting their first look at that information.
And the other thing that struck me from the testimony yesterday, at least from the teachers, was I get the feeling that prosecutors are trying to show the bravery of these teachers, the descriptions of how they put their own lives potential in the way of danger to keep these kids safe. And that felt to me part of where we're headed. What about you? What was your sense of it?
Yes, you get that sense, but you also get the sense, especially in Amy's case, for example, because she was on the phone with 911 trying to say, hey, there was a crash, and then realizing that it turned into something so horribly horrific that none of us can quite comprehend. They were also trying to see, was there anybody saying to Adrian Gonzales, the shooter's over there, did he have any knowledge of where the shooter was? Did he try to distract or deny that shooter access to the school? And that's kind of where we have seen both the prosecution and the defense making their points to either try to prove or disprove that fact. But that's kind of what we're getting so far.
Well, and then it seems like, of course, the defense is trying to argue that Adrian Gonzales never had line of sight of the shooter, and so, which is why they would have fought so hard to keep Stephanie Hale's testimony out.
And, when we talked with the lead defense attorney, Nicola Hood, when all of this happened, when the judge took the pause in the case, he didn't really directly answer the question of how they were going to proceed because they wanted to think on it. But when they came back on Wednesday and asked for a mistrial, he later told us that legally they had to put that motion into effect. But they were actually the ones who came up with the idea to continue the cross-examination. And because up to that point, the jury had only heard, obviously, all of the prosecution questions and then only a part of the defense questions.
What's your sense? I know this morning we're going to hear more cross-examination of the DPS investigator. Any sense of where we're going after that? Are we going to start to see body cams and have prosecutors given any hint of what we might see today?
No official hints for the public. However, you would anticipate, of course, that those body cams that have been made public before, or maybe some that haven't been made public before, would pop up at a certain point. Even some of the documents that have been discussed or released after the years that so many TV companies spent in court trying to get them released through the Freedom of Information Act.
Well, and then the other thing I have to wonder is, the families had expressed how upset they were with prosecutors. Are they still pretty upset, or do we have any sense of where their feeling is right now with prosecutors after yesterday's testimony?
So not after yesterday's testimony, but after Judge Cedar decided to not grant the motion for mistrial, Jesse Rizzo, who is the uncle of Uvalde massacre victim Jackie Cáceres, he said that he hopes it was a lesson for the DA and her team, that they'll be able to keep things really buttoned up. And he even said that day they felt like things were going a little bit more direct, in the sense that it didn't feel as, kind of as, okay, it's here, there, everywhere. It was more put together. And so they seem to have confidence that this is still going to be presented as the case that they have kind of been clued into.
Okay. Well, Amanda, we really thank you for joining us. Is there anything I haven't asked you that I should have asked you?
I think the one thing to remember with this trial is that it's not going to be a quick one. Judge Sid Harrell, during jury selection process and, of course, during opening statements, was very clear. It's going to take at least 2 weeks to go through all of the evidence, and we lost a day. That's something to keep in mind. The jury lost Wednesday to go through any witness testimony. So while we are coming to the end of the first week, we still probably have at least a week to go based on Judge Harrell's estimations.
Well, and week of testimony, and then of course deliberations, and then depending on if he's convicted or not, other testimony beyond that. So anyway, thank you so much, Amanda. We appreciate you for joining us this morning.
Thank you, guys.
I want to spend some time talking here. So folks, I've got James Hawthorne with me. James and I have known each other for 25 years, long time. We go way back to when he was with the Arlington Police Department, but you led the Cedar Hill Independent School District Police Department. How long were you with Cedar Hill?
Yeah, I was there 9 years. And we did a lot of things there. One of the things obviously that we tried to make sure that we were doing a good job of was making sure that we were doing our active shooter training and following all the protocols that the state had mandated, but just also in terms of preparedness, so that we were serving our student body the best that we could. We tried to make sure that we were up on our trainings and doing those repetitively with multiple agencies, the Cedar Hill Police Department involving the Cedar Hill Fire Department, so we did multi-agency training.
So it becomes muscle memory.
Becomes muscle memory, yes, and that's what we wanted. We wanted it to be muscle memory because when you are forced into a situation, a high-stress situation, we want you to default to training, and so that's why that training, repetitive training, is so important. Because when you confronted with a situation, that's how in law enforcement we want you to defer to the training.
And back prior to Uvalde, that training was not mandatory.
Right, it was not mandatory. We did the training, and I remember when I first joined the Cedar Hill School District as the police chief over there, one of the first things that we did was go through the active shooter training, alert training is what they call it. And it wasn't mandatory, but after Uvalde, things changed, and of course that type of training became mandatory. But we were doing it prior to, and a lot of other school districts and agencies were doing it as well, prior to it becoming mandatory, by the state. And it was just our way of just making sure that we were putting our best foot forward in order to protect the children. Give parents confidence that when they send their kids to school, that we're doing our best to ensure everybody's safety, and not only the safety of the kids, but the staff that are there as well.
And talk to me about that training. How are officers taught to respond in these cases?
Well, as a law enforcement officer, you know that you're going to be called at any moment. That could happen to be in a situation that's very precarious, and so we're trained to confront those situations as best we can with the best training that we can, and so a lot of times when we go into these types of situations, they're very hazardous, and we're trained for that. And so
you're trained to go, though.
We're trained to go. That's
so
right.
It's not wait till we get the SWAT team, wait till we get the helmets, wait till we get to the shields. It's go.
No, it's go, 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 and that's been the training for a number of years. It's been the training ever since I've been in law enforcement. We were talking a little earlier. After Columbine, we saw that waiting for the SWAT team was not the appropriate response in an active shooter incident, and so it just changed the whole sea of how we did emergency response. I was a hostage negotiation supervisor, so I know the response for emergency response teams. And after Columbine, again, that just changed the whole response, the whole nature of how we respond. We recognize that in those types of situations, the priority is to stop the killing and then stop the dying. And so we had to adjust, if you will, and not wait for a tactical team to get there. The lesson learned from that was while we were assembling and containing the situation from inside, people were inside bleeding right out. And so we had to do a better job of getting to those individuals neutralizing the threat and enabling the emergency response personnel to be able to get in and do their job, which is to save lives. And so, yeah, go ahead.
Well, because there was a recognition after Columbine that an active shooter, they have one goal.
They have one goal.
And it's to kill.
Yes.
And kill as many people as they can until they are killed or taken into custody.
Right.
So
That's
waiting
exactly
for
right.
a SWAT team, that is not the answer.
That's not the answer, right? And so all the training that we did, and I was at Arlington Police Department when we changed our training and started doing the active shooter training to meet those new protocols. And so this type of training that we've done has been my point in saying that it's been around for a long time, and police departments and police agencies and officers have been engaged in this type of training. So we know from a profession standpoint what it is that we need to do. We understand the priorities, and really until this incident happened, I'd not heard of a situation, I'd not heard of a response anyway, that would have mirrored what we saw in Uvalde. And so that was the quite tragic response, for everybody involved. And from law enforcement standpoint, it left a lot of us scratching our heads as well as to why that situation unfolded like it did.
Well, because for reasons that I don't understand, I've watched quite a bit of the body cams, and they decide they've got a barricaded person on their hands, and I don't really understand why they decided that. Given what they knew, it's like they made some assumptions. And can you really assume in a case like that when you're in a school and school's in session?
No. I mean, we knew from a law enforcement perspective, we knew that the individual had gone in there and fired shots inside the building. And so I remember watching some of the body cam, and I saw one of the officers call for a SWAT team, which that's appropriate. But what I didn't see was the mobilization of a team action to go toward the where the shots were fired to try to render assistance again to stop a shooter. And so it was very clear from what I saw that we had an active shooter incident, and the response should have matched the facts of what we had in that particular situation. And that just didn't happen. And then the people responding, obviously, they're taking the word for the people who are on the scene already. If you're responding and the people on scene are telling you it's a barricaded person, and you weren't there in the initial incident when it took place, you're relying on the information of the officers who are on the scene. And so it's just a cascading of misinformation, a lack of the appropriate assessment of what was going on inside the building, and we just saw that cascading unfolding into inappropriate decision making, a lack of action, and ultimately just a big failure, a catastrophic failure on the part of law enforcement to respond to that type of situation.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know that I'll ever really understand what happened there. You think it was a function of lack of, what's your sense of, was it a lack of training? I mean, of course, I think what's going to be argued here is cowardice.
Yeah. I don't know if it was lack of training, because I don't know those individuals' training records and what they have done and what they hadn't done. But I do know that as a law enforcement community, and I would, stretch to say that I know that agency, those members of that department, the city as well as the school district, had some level of active shooter response training. I'm pretty confident of that without knowing their records. And so I would imagine when an event like this unfolded, the response that had been trained, that had been taught, was not the response that was followed. And it was pretty obvious to me, just getting the information and seeing how it unfolded, that we had an active shooter. And the response should have been to mobilize a team and confront the shooter and take that person out, in order to save lives. And so that just didn't happen. And all the training that I've ever been a part of, years before I was at a school district, that was the training that that was taught to us, that was ingrained in us, and ingrained in every response that we had. And like I said, in law enforcement, I've been confronted in situations. I've had to go into very hazardous, very dangerous situations, and I knew that was part of the deal that I signed up for. And so we know going into any situation, any day, on any call, it could be a very hazardous situation, but that's what we signed up to do. And so we should not hesitate. We should not be afraid. I mean, fear, it will, in some aspects, fear will keep you alive. So a dose of fear is healthy, but you have to act, you have to respond. And we just didn't see that happen in this situation.
Okay, so we're starting to see family members, prosecution team has come into the courtroom, and the court is expected to start around 9 a.m.